Millions of Nigerians go to the polls for what they hope will be their first credible presidential election in decades. But who among the candidates is able to fix Nigeria's ongoing problems? And could this vote set an example across the continent? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Ghida Fakhry. Polling stations opened on Saturday for Africa's biggest election as over 70 million Nigerians vote for a new president. The incumbent, Goodluck Jonathan, from the south, is seen as the frontrunner despite a poor performance in last week's parliamentary elections by his People's Democratic Party. His main challenge is expected to come from Muhammadu Buhari from the north. Nuhu Ribadu, also from the north, is another main contender. The Nigerian government has repeatedly promised the elections will be credible, but problems have already forced the vote to be postponed. In a country where vote rigging, violence and intimidation have been common, how genuine will Nigeria's election really be? We'll be putting this and other questions to our three guests. In Abuja, Dapo Oyewole. He is the Executive Director of the Center for African Policy and Peace Strategy. In London, Patrick Wilmot, a political commentator on African affairs, and also in London, Jonathan Offei-Ansah. He is the editor of News Africa. Welcome to you all. Dapo Oyewole in Abuja. The current president, is facing a challenge from two main contenders, both from the north. Can either of them defeat him in this election?
Well, if you look at some of the polls and some of the voting patterns that we've seen recently, the possibility of either of the two contenders defeating the incumbent president is quite limited. The recent polls by a newspaper here called This Day indicated that the current president has the possibility of winning by 60%, followed by Buhari 23% and Nuhu Ribadu 6%. Recently, the two parties tried to come together and engage in negotiations to field one candidate. Unfortunately, they were unable to do that, and I think that has significantly reduced their chances of unseating President Jonathan.
Patrick Wilmot, the bar seems to be set quite high, though, for any of the candidates to win outright. They would not only need to win 50% or more of the votes, but in addition to that, they need to secure at least 25% of the vote in 2/3 of Nigeria's 36 states. Does any of the candidates have that kind of broad-based national following?
Yes, Jonathan has, because his ruling party is the only national party that exists at the moment. They're very, very unpopular, but in the absence of a credible national party on the other side, I think he's going to get in fairly easily. I think he will get the 50-something% that he requires, and I think he will get the 25% in the other 24 states. But
do you think he'll be popular enough in the north of the country?
In the north of the country, the situation is very complex. You have what is called the Middle Belt. The minority areas in which you have mostly Christians. The House of Fulani Muslim vote is split between Ribadu, Buhari, and some will vote for Jonathan. So he will not get that a fantastic majority in the north, but he will get a substantial percentage of the vote there. He will get the votes in his own area of the minorities in the Delta. He will get most of the Igbo votes. He'll get quite a large percentage of the Yoruba vote in the southwest. He'll get a lot of votes among the southern minorities.
Jonathan
so I think all in all,
Sorry to interrupt you, but let's put that question to Jonathan Offei-Ansah. Do you agree that Goodluck Jonathan may be popular enough, not just in the south of the country, but in the north as well? And does this standard of ensuring an outright majority across the board, does it protect against voting along regional and confessional lines?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with what Dr. Wilmot, with Dr. Wilmot's analysis. Number one, like he said, PDP is the largest party. Actually, it calls itself the largest political party in the whole of Africa. And we shouldn't forget that Goodluck has the advantage of incumbency, and as the sitting president, the security services, and also access to the state media. And he has taken a cue from Obama's campaign strategy, of using the social media to appeal, to target, the young voters. Social media like Facebook and Twitter. He's been known to have stated, periodically stated most of his programs, political programs, agenda on Facebook, which, spreads around like wildfire, if you like. And again, like Dr. Wilmot said, he comes from the South, and he's going to gain a lot of votes, especially from the Niger Delta region, as well as, the Southwest, the Yoruba region. But with the North, that's, a bit of a problem, because we shouldn't forget that there was this arrangement within the PDP of rotating power between the North and the South, the zonings, the so-called zoning system. And since he succeeded, he became president by default after the demise of his predecessor, Umaru Yar'Adua. Some Northerners thought that, he should stand aside for a Northerner to continue, that zoning system, but he refused. So, I mean, there's some sort of
and he didn't, and that led to some controversy, and it also led to quite a bit of bitterness, Dapo Oyewole, among the Northerners who felt that it is now their turn, who felt that Goodluck Jonathan finished the term of his predecessor who died in office, who was a Northerner. So how much bitterness will there be among people in the North, among the Muslims, and how will he be able to overcome that, do you think?
Well, I think this actually is one of the key aspects of this election that is quite engaging. The fact that it has essentially broken that, what they call a gentleman's agreement within the ruling party of having a rotational presidency whereby you will have one president from the South then replaced by someone from the North. But with the demise of the late President Yar'Adua, it was said that Goodluck Jonathan should finish that term and step down. Unfortunately, for many of the northern political bigwigs who thought that this was their own opportunity to rule this country, it did not work out that way, and Goodluck Jonathan earned the PDP ticket to become the flag bearer. Yes, there are many groups within the North. There are many political groups within the North that may feel that that arrangement has been broken. But generally in Nigeria, the opinion on the streets seems to be that people don't really care anymore where you come from as such. What they want is to have a visionary, credible, and competent leader. And this is why it's very important that should President Goodluck Jonathan win this time around, he will have to deliver on the promises that he's made, or else people might retreat back into their ethnic political enclaves.
Patrick Wilmot, do you agree that this will be less about ideological differences, less about confessional differences, and more about the issues that matter to the voters? This power issue, the shortage in electricity, the fact there are not enough schools, not enough jobs, the issue of corruption. Is that what will matter most to voters in the end?
Yes, and I mean, the people are now very, concerned that their votes will count, because Jonathan has gotten a lot of popularity all over Nigeria for appointing Professor Atahiru Jega as the head of the electoral body. Jega is somebody with a great deal of integrity. He's a very intelligent person. He's not corrupt, and he can't be pushed around. So people believe that he will organize, a very credible elections. And, they have come out much more this time than last week, which, was, the National Assembly elections. So lots of people have come out simply because they believe that their votes will count. And this time, I think it will.
Jonathan Offei-Ansah, in London, how do you think voters will feel about the issue of perhaps, again, electing a Northerner? So voters who are from the South electing someone from the North, a Muslim, such as one of the frontrunners, Muhammadu Buhari. Or do they still view him in large parts as someone who has perhaps a suspicious radical Islamist agenda because he did support the implementation of Sharia law in northern states of the country?
At this point in time in Nigeria's political history, I think what the people are going to do today, is to vote for somebody they believe, can deliver the goods. Nigeria has been, for far too long, most Nigerians, for far too long, have been, can I say, suffering, despite the abundant wealth, primarily from the oil revenue. So they will vote for somebody who they believe can deliver, can, improve their economic well-being. Okay, and again, we have the issue of security. Who can, there's unrest in the Delta region. You take Jos, in I think the Middle Belt, where there's clashes, violent clashes between Muslim communities and the Muslim and the Christian communities. And then when we take the Northeast, we have the threats, activities by the so-called Boko Haram. Okay, so they want somebody who can improve the security situation in the country and who can deliver and also tackle corruption. But what concerns most Nigerians today is power, adequate electricity to power, industrial installations, to provide energy in their homes, and so on and so forth. So I believe the idea of somebody from the north or somebody from the south, I think doesn't really feature much, here at this point in time. But somebody who they believe can deliver the goods.
And who is that somebody, Dapo Oyewole? Do you think Goodluck Jonathan is best positioned to deal not with these practical issues only, but with the security issue, having been vice president at the time when an amnesty deal was struck with militants in the Niger Delta precisely?
Well, that is one of the things that Goodluck Jonathan has put forward as a deliverable that he has provided in terms of in his campaign, which is that he was instrumental in having the amnesty for militants in the Niger Delta. The Niger Delta has calmed down significantly since the amnesty process, and perhaps he's using that to try and say, I know how to find solutions to the security problems in Nigeria, and I can deliver that. But we've seen also, and we need to bear in mind, that elections, good, free and fair elections, does not necessarily translate to good governance. And even after these elections, there's so much more that needs to be talked about in terms of having independent and functional institutions of democracy. Now, one of the things that Goodluck Jonathan has put forward in terms of how we might be able to address the security situation is, on one hand, through the amnesty. But there's one other issue which has not been, we need to talk about in more depth, which is that around this political period, we've seen a lot of bomb explosions. This is something that is very different in Nigeria. We've also seen sporadic eruptions of violence in different places. While he has been able to demonstrate that he's able to control the security apparatus of the state, we have not heard very clearly exactly how he intends to deal with what is increasingly organized, shall we use the word terrorism in this instance?
Precisely, Patrick Wilmot, the issue of security very much still existent in the country. Just in the last 48 hours, bombs have erupted in the northeast of the country. So clearly he hasn't gotten that under control.
Yeah, the problem in Maiduguri and the northeast in general, the Boko Haram people, I suspect some of the violence and some of the bomb making comes from across the border in Chad, because a lot of these Sudanese rebels are based in Chad, and Nigeria has a big connection with the Sudan from historical times when people crossed through the Sudan on the way to Mecca. I suspect some of these people have been brought into the region, and they have the backing of certain religious as well as political leaders in that area, and they're using these people to create instability because of political differences with the people who run the state and with the federal government.
Jonathan Offei-Ansah, I want to get back to the points you made about the critical issues of socioeconomic factors in this election. As we mentioned earlier, there are lots of issues that people are concerned with, electricity being one of them, besides the issue of lack of opportunities as well in the country. Now, you would think that in a situation like this, when we're talking about a country that is the largest exporter of oil in Africa, one of the world's major exporters of gas and oil, you would think that you would have more of the people in Nigeria living a good standard of life, which isn't the case. More than half the population subsist on less than $2 a day. Is that something the opposition should be able to capitalize on, and is that something the ruling party should bear responsibility for in these elections?
Well, both the opposition and the ruling party should bear responsibility for this sorry state of economic affairs in Nigeria, because this situation goes a long way. I mean, I remember in the oil boom times of the 1970s, I come from Ghana, and I recall a lot of Ghanaians migrating to Nigeria. And I recall one broadcast by the then head of state in Nigeria, Jonathan, saying that Nigeria's problem wasn't money, but the problem was how to spend it. It appears, that problem of how to spend it, had been solved, through corruption by a few people enriching themselves at the expense of the ordinary Nigerians. So much so that it appears the average Nigerian has become inured to the situation of corruption in the country, so that everybody, it's like a free-for-all. Everybody would like to, look after themselves instead of maybe contributing to the national effort. We like to look from the bottom right up to the top. And this is an issue that whoever comes to power, be the PDP, Goodluck Jonathan, Buhari, or Ribadu, any of them, whoever wins the election today or when the results are declared next week, should address the issue of corruption, and again, the issue of electricity, and overall try to uplift, the economic well-being of the average Nigerian. So it's not a blame that can be put at the door of any one particular party, at this point in time.
Dapo Oyewole, do you think that the lessons from neighboring countries like Ghana, its experience of transitioning into democracy and tackling many issues, obviously not on such a large scale as those faced by Nigeria when it comes to corruption, but other issues as well, can that be a lesson that can be learned by Nigerians going forward?
Yes, indeed. But I think, if you don't mind, I'd like to go back to the issue of corruption itself, which is the big elephant in the room. For a long time, the social contract between Nigerians and their political leaders has been broken. And many Nigerians became very disconnected from the political leadership for one fundamental reason. They feel that a lot of the politicians are actually vying for political office just to have access to the national treasury. And when you look at the sorry state of the economy here in Nigeria at the moment, if you look at the level of unemployment, if you look at the level of poverty, which is over 70%, it is very difficult for us to say that the Nigeria's political leadership has done well. If there is going to be one major issue that Nigerians are looking for the next leader to tackle, it is that issue of corruption. And that particularly was one of the key points that General Buhari had in terms of his own campaign, that he has never been accused of corruption, his integrity is intact, and many Nigerians who would vote for him, or who have said that they may vote for him, said they would do so because one of the fundamental things that needs to happen first is sanitizing the country. Now, the second issue in terms of lessons for other African countries. Nigeria has always been a trendsetter in Africa. I think we could turn that around and say that if Nigeria is able to get its electoral processes right, if it's able to build solid and credible public institutions, if it's able to provide public services to its people, then I think the rest of Africa might actually look at Nigeria as an example. But equally importantly, is that Nigeria can also begin to champion the cause of Africa Africa on the international stage. So yes, there are lessons that Nigeria can learn from other African countries, but Nigeria being the economic and military powerhouse in ECOWAS, as well as a key player in the African Union, I think Nigeria actually should be the country that shows the right examples for other African countries and perhaps even other countries in the more developed parts of the world to follow.
Patrick Wilmot, corruption, as Dapo Oyewole mentions, is an endemic issue, particularly in Nigeria. And you've got also a very complex social fabric, 150 million people or more, 250 tribes, a largely Muslim north, a largely Christian south, with sizable minorities in each. How does one even go about rooting out this issue of corruption?
Well, I think that one of the reasons that Jonathan is not linked, that much with his corrupt political party is that he became president not so long ago, so he does not have a history of corruption. He doesn't have a baggage of corruption the way that some other leaders had in the past. So I don't think the people are going to blame him personally for his own corruption. I think they will probably say that he has to do more to control the people around him.
His wife has been investigated on serious allegations of corruption. His wife, so people among his inner circle have been accused of corruption.
That's what I'm saying, that people don't blame him personally, but they blame the people around him. I don't think that that issue is going to, affect the election, especially because Jonathan has said that he is only standing for one term. But he is going to have to do something about the level of corruption, because the political party he operates is so corrupt that the money that is left over is not enough to do the essential infrastructure things like the cities like Lagos, Abuja, Kano. They cannot function without having subways. They cannot function without having huge amounts of electricity. But at the moment, although Jonathan has improved the situation with power to a limited extent, the fact is that you do not have the amount of power that a country the size and complexity of Nigeria should have.
What about his two main,
is one of the things that is causing that.
Let me ask Jonathan Offei-Ansah, what about the two main rivals? We haven't spoken about them too much. Do they have what it takes to perhaps also deal with this issue of corruption? After all, some people say that Goodluck Jonathan is a politician without a political base. He hasn't been voted into office. A lot of people regard him as an accidental president. Has he done enough to show people that he has developed in the time he's been in office since 2010 and that he can actually tackle all of these issues?
Well, let me respond by going back to what Dr. Wilmot again just said. You see, he himself is deemed not maybe corrupt, but those around him, and that is a mantra that is chanted, in most African countries, that the leader himself is clean, but those around him. But the inability of the leader to check corruption amongst his officials, makes him culpable, for what, in my opinion, for what his ministers or officials do. So if you cannot check your officials, then you are not fit to be there. And number two, he needs to, Buhari, for instance, is known. I've spoken to a number of Nigerians who believe that if Buhari were to be president, corruption will be a thing of the past or will be brought down to the barest minimum.
Dapo Oyewole in Abuja, in the time left to us, what do you think Goodluck Jonathan will be counting on besides the divisions among the opposition groups? Will he also be counting on the well-oiled, well-financed political machinery of the ruling political party?
Without a doubt, I think the PDP is a behemoth of a political machinery. It's a war chest. It's a financial war chest, and its political war chest cannot be matched by any of the parties. And I know that, without a doubt, that will be instrumental in President Goodluck Jonathan actually winning.
Certainly a lot at stake in these elections. Thank you to all my guests, Dapo Oyewole, Patrick Wilmot, and Jonathan Offei-Ansah. And thank you all very much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We, as always, welcome your suggestions and comments. You can email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. From me, Ghida Fakhry, and the team in Doha, thanks for watching.